What are the strategic priorities of DISA? How is it strengthening the security and resilience of networks and systems? What is it doing to prioritize command and control? And how is DISA leveraging data as a strategic asset? I'll explore these questions and so much more with our very special guest, Lieutenant General Robert Skinner, Director of the Defense Information Systems Agency, DISA. For some context setting, could you tell us about the mission of DISA and why is it so important, sir, to the success of the U.S. Department of Defense now more than ever?
That's a great question, Mike. And I'll tell you, at the end of the day, the DISA, Defense Information Systems Agency, as a combat support agency, provides information technology and communications to the warfighter. And we provide it to not just the warfighter, but to every single segment of the Department of Defense. There's no mission that I know of that isn't leveraging in some form or fashion a capability that has DISA's fingerprints on it. That's why I think that the importance of DISA to the department cannot be overstated. And especially now when you think about all the dynamic environment that we live in today, the geopolitical situation that we live in today, the Department of Defense and the national security of our nation is at the utmost importance, and we play a key role in that.
I was wondering, given your duties, what are some of the key challenges, say management challenges, leadership challenges, however you want to caveat it? What are some of them that you face, and how have you sought to address those challenges?
Yeah, it's interesting, Mike. I would offer one of the big things that we try and do on a day-to-day basis that is a challenge in any organization is how do we reduce, if not rid ourselves of institutional silliness. That's a coin that one of my friends used many years ago that we keep at the forefront of what we're trying to do. And that is any policy, any directive, any initiative, anything out there that is inhibiting an individual or a team's ability to innovate, to get after the problems that we have today and or tomorrow, that's stopping them from being the optimized team or optimized self. That I think is one of the biggest challenges in any organization, especially the organization of this size in that many different locations. As you know, there's always some urban legend and folklore that says that you can't do X, Y, and Z. But when you really dig down into it, there is nothing out there. And it's not you can't. And so unless it's explicitly stated, then there's some flexibility to get after the mission as long as it's, legal, moral, and ethical. And so that's what we're trying to drive within the organization is one of the big challenges is how do we get rid of that institutional silliness so that we can be more effective and efficient with the mission that we have. The other thing that we're focused on from a challenge is how do we improve our relationships and our partnerships with whether it's our mission partners, whether it's industry, whether it's our allies and partners. There is a vast amount of capability in all parts of organizations and how we can leverage the partnerships to get lessons learned from others' lessons so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel or that we don't have to learn it ourselves. How do we build those partnerships so that we're learning from each other? Because a learning organization is a better organization, which becomes an innovative organization. And that's what we're trying to drive. The other thing that we're also looking at is we have a phrase called, wouldn't it be cool if? And ensuring that individuals, when they ask that question of themselves, when they ask that question of others, the real heart of the question is don't limit yourself by what you are trying to do because you think it may not be approved or somebody may not like it. Sometimes you have to ask something that you may think is unreasonable to break the artificial barrier that you have above you of getting after the mission. And so as you think about, wouldn't it be cool if we have a force that is just amazing. If I would come in the military today, I would definitely not be as successful as I was back in, I'll just say, a few decades ago. Because the capabilities and the talent that we have today from a force standpoint is just tremendous, and amazing is the word that I use. And so the challenge is how do you keep them engaged? How do you have the right professional development? How do you have the right recruiting and retaining processes and procedures to keep the force moving in the right direction? But also, how do you bring in the force in an agile manner that sometimes the personnel systems of the Department of Defense are still industrial age versus where we need to be today. And while we've made some great strides, being able to hire someone in days and maybe a couple of weeks versus months is the goal I think that we've got to get at, especially with the way the mobile force is today. And people don't necessarily want to stay in the same position or same organization or same company for decades now. And so how do we adjust our personnel practices and our hiring practices to adjust for that?
So, I'd like for you, General Skinner, to kind of outline your strategic vision for DISA. And particularly, could you tell us more about your strategic priorities? You kind of alluded to the line of efforts that you've crafted in the previous segment. I was wondering if you could delve into it a little bit and how it kind of marshals your vision.
Sure, that'd be great. At the end of the day, DISA's vision is to be the trusted provider to connect and protect the warfighter in cyberspace. That's kind of that's what we want to be. That's what we strive for. And for fiscal year 22 to 24, we kind of outlined, I'll say, 5 priorities that we have different action items underneath that we, on a biweekly basis, we look at these action items and see how well we are progressing towards the objectives. I would tell you the number one mission, and this is our LOE1, the number one mission priority is the prioritization of command and control. As I mentioned earlier, right, we're responsible for ensuring that the President, the Secretary of Defense, our combatant commanders, our Department of Defense senior leaders are able to communicate and provide command and control to either each other, to our fielded forces at the strategic, operational, and/or tactical level, and up and down. They've got to be able to communicate in a secure environment where necessary, in a bad day environment, if a bad day happens in the future. And so that's why that has to be our number one priority, bar none, from a mission standpoint. The second one that we have, and I'm happy to go into any insights into that one if you like, is how do we drive force readiness through innovation? As I mentioned earlier, right, we have an innovation in a center, in the name of a center, and this is really about how do we leverage machine learning, artificial intelligence, robotics process automation, any innovative technology or process that really drives our force readiness. Because innovate to innovate means nothing to me. Innovate to improve our readiness, innovate to improve our outcomes, innovate to improve our capabilities. That's what we have to focus on. And so those were just some of the few areas that we had. Leveraging data as a center of gravity is kind of our I'll say, middle priority. And this is really about, to me, data is a center of gravity. And if you own the data, then you own the high ground. I'll say operational speak, and you own the decision space more so than others who don't leverage data as a center of gravity. And I'll tell you, if you think of all the 300 million IP addresses that we have, that's just IPv4. If you think of all that space, there is something connected to a lot of those, and that something is logging and/or there's data within each of those. So there is a significant amount of data across the entire Department of Defense that if we can really leverage that at all the different levels, we'd be a lot more powerful than we are. And I still offer that we're the most powerful Department of Defense in the world. The fourth area, and this is where kind of how do we harmonize cybersecurity and the user experience? If you looked on LinkedIn and other social media sites, you'll see things about fix my computer. You'll see other articles where individuals are very passionate about their IT capabilities. And so how do we harness the technology and optimize that technology while also ensuring we have the right cybersecurity so that a user experience is better than it is today? There's sometimes, and I've said this in other forums, where the endpoint of some of our endpoints and some of our devices, they're the soul crushers of the mission, because it takes too long to log in. It takes too many times to input whether your passwords or so there's a lot of things that just go into, it's just not a great experience at that times. And then some of the latency comes into play. And so we're really focused on, okay, so how do we improve that user experience while maintaining the security? And then the final one, which I kind of left for last, but I would offer it's the most important one overall, which is empowering the workforce. We talked a little bit about it in the last segment. And a lot of people, when they say the workforce, they talk about professionally developing, ensuring they got the right training and education, ensuring we've got the right personnel processes so that we can hire the right individuals and then retain them. This is also about organizational design and also about organizational efficiency. We cannot compete with industry from a strictly monetary standpoint in a lot of the positions that we have because of how important they are, both from a department standpoint and from a nation standpoint. And so there has to be other areas. First one would be mission, right? I mean, we have a unique mission that people can do things within the Department of Defense that they can't do anywhere else. But also you want an organization that people want to come to. So the culture of the organization has to be a culture that people want to be a part of. The bureaucracy, you want to have minimal bureaucracy so that people are able to be the best of themselves, as we talked about earlier, and you optimize the individual and you optimize the team aspect. And so, being part of a family. And so all those things kind of come together to have a organizational experience that people want to come to, but more important than that people will talk to their friends and say, I work at DISA or I work at JFHQ Doden and I love it. And here's why I love working there. Probably not peaches and cream every day, just because of the dynamic nature and the environment that we work in and that we operate in on a daily basis. But it's truly a place that people want to come to and they want to share it with their friends and their colleagues. I tell everyone, I skip to work every day. I'm excited to come to work. I'm excited for what we're doing. But by the end of the day, I'm dragging home because of all the work that the team is doing. But then I get some rest and I come back and I'm excited the next day. And that's been every day since I've been in the seat.
I'll tell you, sir, it comes through in your conversation with me right now. And I'd like to jump ahead a little bit and talk about a terminology or a phrase that you use that I came across, and that is the velocity of action. I was wondering, why is it so important to focus on this velocity of action when you're focusing on securing network communications for our warfighters?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the reason that I picked velocity of action to win, and we as a team is, a lot of people will use speed, and speed to me is just it's going someplace, but you know what? You may not be going the right place, but you're going fast. It's like my golf game. I can hit the ball far, but if I'm hitting it far in the woods, it does me no good. And so velocity is really about having the right speed and acceleration in the right direction, because that's the only way that we are going to stay ahead of the adversary. All you got to do is read in open source what some of our adversaries are trying to do on a day-to-day basis and how agile they are, and you realize that we have to maintain that velocity. And it's all about action, right? You can study things, you can research things, you can do a lot of things, but it's all about action and getting to outcomes. And so really focusing on that to go, okay, we know what we need to do. Let's just get after it. And if there is bureaucracy in the way, if there's speed bumps in the way, then let's address those and get after them. because at the end of the day, this is about maintaining the rules-based international order that we are accustomed to and that we are the leaders in, that is at stake in the future if we are not accelerating and we do not have that velocity of action to win.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Earlier, sir, you mentioned the DISA is a combat support agency, and that your no fail priority is command and control, C2. Can you define for us what that really means in action, and why is it so critical to the success of the mission of your agency?
Yeah, this C2, in a very basic sense, is the ability and the exercising of authority and direction by a senior leader, usually a designated commander, over assigned forces to accomplish a mission. That is, so there's you provide direction, and then there's the proper control measures in place to have that direction be understood and executed. And that is really at the heart of the department's mission. Is there is a mission that has to be done, and so the ability of multiple echelons to be able to provide that direction to the force so that the force can be agile and get after the problem set. And so if you think about the ability to do that, if you're in a disconnected environment or if you're in a contested environment, then that ability still has to be there. You still have to have the ability to command and control. And if nothing else, the ability to have the left and right bounds for your commanders and your business leaders and whoever else to go run and I'll say drive action against the objectives will have to be there no matter what. And even if it's a disconnected environment, they at least have the last known left and right bounds that they can work through. And our ability to enable that even in a contested environment, even in a bad day scenario where there's contingency operations, having the ability to have that infrastructure in place and those programs in place for our leaders to be successful and to have the right information to make the right decisions so that we can be successful from a national security standpoint is really what it's all about. And this even goes, and I didn't really mention it that much, from a senior leader standpoint, is our nuclear command and control capabilities, right? Our NC3. That is part and parcel to strategic command, to the Department of Defense, and our nation as a significant deterrent capability. And we've got to make sure that at any point in time that the president and our national command authorities are able to give the proper direction from a national security standpoint. And that's why it's our number one priority, because that is truly a no-fail mission.
Another area you mentioned, sir, where you're innovating is around, changing culture around data as a strategic asset. I was hoping you could tell us more about your efforts in this area. What are some of the key challenges to transforming your agency toward a more data-centric culture?
I would say the biggest challenge is stovepipe data. And I think that's a challenge for many organizations is how do you ensure that you have access, that I'll say there's an enterprise ability to access the right data necessary and access that data to where you can have a more holistic look at what is going on within your organization, whether it's personnel processes, whether it's network defense, whether it's cybersecurity, service providers, being able to have your applications and your artificial intelligence and your machine learning applications, being able to access the veracity and the expansiveness of all the data to really give you a better decision, because you have more data to work through. And that's because there's so much data, you've got to leverage AI and you got to leverage robotics process automation to get after those tasks that take a long time with a human having to do that, whether manually or through spreadsheets, and really leveraging that technology to put that data into a understandable form and understandable linkages with other data. So you can kind of see, vice a data point, you can see trends and you can see connections in between data that you couldn't see before. That's really what we're trying to get. And so how do you have a data strategy for an organization as large as ours that brings in all these different disparate organizations and getting from today, which is more disparate, to a more holistic look from a data and enterprise standpoint is really what we're trying to accomplish with our chief data officer.
Sir, is there any other key accomplishments you want to highlight? And perhaps maybe you could tie them to your vision of what the future holds for DISA.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I'll highlight, and I'll tell you, we could take an hour talking about the key accomplishments that we have, and I'm getting the shaking of head from the team going, okay, we don't have an hour. I'll tell you, the Thunderdome is a pilot that we have going on now that we'll be making a fielding decision at the end of the year. And that's a kind of a new way of thinking about how we're going to do cybersecurity and network routing for the future. The work that team has done in getting to where we are today is phenomenal. The identity credentialing and access management team, you may have saw on LinkedIn, we just put out a minimum viable product for the department, which has about I'll say 30 different applications and a multitude of organizations who are leveraging it today. Those are a couple of examples. But I could go through the work that we're doing from an infrastructure standpoint, the work that we're doing in the cloud environment, and having containerized cloud capabilities. It's amazing if you look at each of the different organizations and what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. I feel bad by only mentioning a couple, because there's so much going on that DISA is producing on a day-to-day basis that most people don't know about.
This has been the Business of Government Hour, a conversation with Lieutenant General Robert Skinner, Director of the Defense Information Systems Agency, DISA. Be sure to join us next time for another informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government leadership and its effectiveness. Until then, subscribe, download, and listen to the entire interview at Podcast One, iTunes, or on your favorite podcast app. And as always, at businessofgovernment.org.